This episode is brought to you by Columbia Sportswear. It's snowing again, and that wind chill is killer. But you're not worried about that because you shop the Omni Heat Infinity Collection. It's warmth perfected with tiny gold dots that reflect your body heat inside and protect you from the cold outside. No snow or chilly temps can stop you now. Go out anyway. Shop the Omni Heat Infinity Collection now at Columbia.com/infinity.
Apple Card is the credit card created by Apple. You earn 3% daily cash back up front when you use it to buy a new iPhone 15, AirPods, or any products at Apple. And you can automatically grow your daily cash at 4.15% annual percentage yield when you open a high-yield savings account. Apply for Apple Card in the Wallet app on iPhone. Apple Card subject to credit approval. Savings is available to Apple Card owners subject to eligibility. Savings accounts by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, member FDIC. Terms apply.
In sports, the scoreboard doesn't tell the full story, but Netflix does. Stories about dads who happen to be world-class quarterbacks and a battle for the heart, soul, and direction of the multi-billion-dollar business of F1. Whether you're a diehard fan or you're brand new, Netflix has the stories for every type of fan. You can watch these incredible sports stories like Quarterback, F1 Drive to Survive, Untold, and many more now on Netflix.
Serie Chronicles is a Media Chronicles production.
Hey everybody, and welcome to a Serie A Chronicles Q&A episode. I'm going to peel back the curtain for our listeners now, Mina, and just reveal to everybody that we are recording this before Italy's game against North Macedonia in the World Cup playoff semi-final. So please don't mistake our cheerfulness if Italy have lost as a lack of sadness. Obviously, the real reason we had to record this before is that if Italy have lost, I will be in mourning. But also, it might be a tiny bit relevant to this first question, because the first question which we've got this week, which is from Luis Palamitesta in Montreal, has asked, between Locatelli and Tonali, who would you play in the Italian national team? So, of course, again, because we're recording before, we don't know if either of these two did play against North Macedonia. Luis writes, I think Locatelli has underachieved since his move to Juventus. Mina, I can see you're perhaps giving away with your facial expression right now that you don't necessarily agree with that starting premise from Luis.
Listen, I understand why Luis thinks that he's underachieved, because obviously he was like flying at Sassuolo. But this is what happens when you have Maxime Lopez next to you and you are allowed to indulge a little bit more in your strengths. And then when you come to Juventus and they have no midfield and they're completely reliant on you sort of doing everything. So I do think there is a level of him and Juventus trying to find their tactics, trying to construct slowly. And sadly, he is without those perfect partners that will help bring out the best of him. And I think that's why it might look like he's not at this moment the player that we know he is or can be, let's say. And he's not showing that to his full potential. But I think that we will slowly start to see that. But when he has been allowed to indulge in that, I think we've also seen the very best of him. But it is kind of a little bit of Juventus don't suit him, because right now Juventus don't have a midfield, because unfortunately they have a terrible Rabiot that always plays, who has absolutely no understanding of any tactical nature in football, and an Arthur who likes to pass sideways or backwards, but rarely forward. And so it doesn't really help Locatelli, because if everything keeps changing. He wasn't playing with Arthur before. Now he is playing with Arthur. There was Weston McKennie. There's no Weston McKennie. Zakaria was brought in and now he's no longer there. So I just feel like it's all a little bit crazy. Even the forward line has changed massively from Ronaldo in the first game to Moise Kean arriving to then, Dybala injured and Chiesa gone, and now Vlahovic and Morata usually. So it's quite hard. But for the actual question on who would you play in the Italian national team, honestly, I'd like to see both. And I think they're very different players. I think the question has always been Locatelli or Verratti. At least in the Euros, that was very much what everyone was talking about. One of them is very good at sort of taking challenges on and releasing and creating space for those ahead of them in Verratti. He is a different type of ball player. Also, I do like to see him closer to the attacking lineup in terms of Verratti than anywhere else. But Locatelli is a much more vertical player, very good off the ball. Is somebody who will pass the ball, run up, receive, score. A lot of the time, Verratti gets accused of playing these beautiful balls and then sort of watching what he's produced as a result, But he's different on the ball, and I do think they're different. But for Tonali's everything. But I would say he's closer to, your Gattuso kind of player, your nitpicker. I'd like to see Tonali. I'd like to see Barella. There are so many that I don't honestly know how to create this midfield, but I would probably not choose Verratti, and I think people would lose their minds. But I would like to see both Locatelli and Tonali. What about you?
I'm really reluctant to let go of the starting trio from the Euros. I think it worked. I think that Mancini found the balance for it. But I think that you sort of highlighted the most important thing, which is that these two players that we're choosing between here are quite different in terms of what they offer to you. And it really depends to a very great degree what kind of midfield you want to have. Now, obviously, at the Euros, Italy ran with this 4-3-3 that allowed Roberto Mancini to use what's basically a sort of, it's almost like a sliding scale, actually, of sort of the types of midfield you've put in there, because Jorginho is your true regista. I don't know if I use these words, if all of our listeners know what that is, but a regista is a deep lying playmaker. It's generally your midfield orchestrator, your metronome, some people would call it, the one who sets the tempo from the middle of the pitch, who generally sits in a slightly more withdrawn position in front of the defence, but is not a destroyer. Can do some of that, but their first job is to sort of, I keep using different metaphors, but actually probably the best one is to be the quarterback of your team, to run the game, to be the one in the middle of the pitch who says, okay, this is what the play is going to be. This is what it's going to look like. It all starts with that player. And alongside that, Roberto Mancini had this two sort of slightly different options alongside him, depending on which of the other three it was alongside him. But if it was Barella and Verratti, which was the first choice, Barella is really a mezzala. That's a half wing. He's very much a box-to-box player, and that's what he's doing for you. Verratti is almost in between, because Verratti has been a regista at times, but he's still probably most naturally doing that box-to-box work. So he's almost, again, like the hybrid in between. Locatelli, for me, it was presented as the halfway house, but I think he's more of a mezzala, more of a box-to-box player than he is anything else. And I think that he works in that role. Tonali is actually something different, because, as you say, he's more of a Gattuso. He's more of a destroyer. He's more of a getting there and fight, which is something slightly different. It fits in a slightly different vision of your midfield. It kind of works better, or more naturally, almost, at least in a midfield too, where you're going to have probably one player who's more designed to carry the ball, more designed to bring the ball up pitch and do more of that box-to-box work, and one player who's going to do a bit of that regista work, but you're not going to have exactly one player doing that midfield playmaker role, because it's a two-man central midfield. You've got to have someone who's more combative to make up for the fact that you've got two bodies in there instead of three. And I think he's really good at it. I don't know exactly how he would fit into a three. I'm certain you could fit him into a three, but I think that that's very much how I view him. Look, he's a good passer of the ball. I'm not trying to do down his passing. I like him on the ball, but what marks him out compared to some of these other Italy midfielders is, I believe, in his grit, the fact he's going to be getting in people's way, getting in people's faces, getting under opposing midfielders' feet and winning the ball for you a lot in that midfield space. And I think that's really valuable. And I hope that he finds a role in his Italy midfield, not necessarily as a starter, but certainly as part of the menu of options that Roberto Mancini has available to him. So yeah, different options depending on what you want to do tactically. Sorry. Go.
No, I was just going to say that I guess what your balance on midfield changes as well to what you have on your fullbacks. If you have like two very attacking fullbacks, like Theo Hernandez and Calabria, or Achraf Hakimi and Perisic, let's say, you know what I mean, or Gosens, let's say, then you probably need more of a Tonali in midfield. So, but if you somebody who's a little bit more combative that can hold and help it. But then again, if you do have a finer balance where your fullbacks defend a little bit more and you want more creativity through the middle, then you might play Jorginho and Verratti together alongside, I don't know, like a Mezzala, just because of the balances of the side. But
That's a great point. That's a great point. And I just think it's worth adding as well, like part of the issue that Italy is struggling with at the moment is that Euro 2020 setup worked best when you had Spinazzola at left back, who was so getting forward from left back. And ever since he's been out, even the latter part of the tournament, the team has struggled to recreate that dynamic. And it's very possible that we're going to see very different formations. We might already have seen them by the time you're listening to this, as I say, because we're recording before the North Macedonia game. But that it might be that either of those players, Tonali and Locatelli, fits in differently. So just to say that, and yeah, interesting question.
Okay, next one is from Ziad, who is a Chronicles Tifosi Patreon member. Well, nice to hear from someone in New York. What do you think of the five-man substitution rule? Is it time to scrap it, or are there benefits to keeping it? I'll throw it straight at you, Nikki.
Yeah, well, this rule was brought in, obviously, partly as a sort of response initially to the really congested fixture list that happened as a result of the pandemic. I think it was primarily viewed as a responsible and being more responsible about player health and safety, actually, because obviously COVID itself had an impact on players' health and availability, but you had squads that were at risk of being thinned out at any time by outbreaks, and you had a really intense fixture list in a lot of countries as a result, again, of seasons being paused at a certain point during the pandemic. And there was an expectation at first that we would go back to 3 substitutions. I can see this argued either way, because I do think that the 5 substitution rule has a clear effect of aiding the big teams, right? If you've got a deeper squad, then 5 substitutions is better than if you've got a shallow squad. Rich teams tend to have deeper squads. There's a knock-on effect, at least in theory, that the richest teams now will find it even easier to keep deeper squads, because players who otherwise might have played less, because you can only use 3 substitutions, it's easier to get them on the pitch. So it helps the rich. On the other hand, I think probably in the modern game where we put more and more intense physical demands on players, it might be a long-term better decision for player safety to let managers have those 5 substitutions, to give them more chances to make that extra change. So I'm sort of inclined to follow the science on this one. If the doctors think it's a good idea to let teams have more flexibility, then I'd be willing to support it. But I suppose the other downside to it is, if your manager is Simone Inzaghi and he just can't help himself but making bad changes in the second half of the game, then maybe you'd wish you could only have 1 substitution, let alone 5.
That's exactly the point that I was going into, and you robbed me of it. It's true. I shouldn't have let you go faster. Yeah. But it's so true. It's almost like, you kind of want 5 substitutions when you have Klopp at your bench and he brings on those 3 magnificent, 5, whoever he wants, whatever he brought off the bench in San Siro. It's quite another when you've got, Inzaghi throwing on like everyone, like, wait, what are you doing? This was going so well, and you kind of wish that it was only 3 substitutions. Look, at the end of the day, it is what Nikki says. Like, obviously, if it is like a congested fixture and you don't have wonderful fitness coaches that make sure that you're in the right condition, the way that I'd love to see the 5-man substitution rule is that it can stay, except for the fact that doesn't mean that you now invest in a ridiculous bench if you have access to the kind of money that certain teams do, but rather make sure that half that bench is your youth. And then that would be a lovely way to do it, where you can mix everyone and everyone has a chance, rather than us, having players that we just keep sending out, like Sassuolo kept sending out Scamacca or whatever it is. It's about giving people a chance and making that. But I don't know how congested it is going forward. I do think that it disturbs the game too much, to be honest with you. 5 substitutions. I think 3 should be more than enough, because it also forces you to play the right formation from the start rather than correcting things. And I think that gives an advantage to a team that can correct things and takes away the advantage of someone who actually read the game right from the beginning. I mean, obviously, that is the way that it is. There are certain coaches, Ancelotti is one, that is just brilliant at the substitutions. And that is why they are the team that that wins a lot of trophies and the coach that does. So there are benefits to everything. But I'm still a fan of the 3-man substitutions if everyone is in good health and they're not increasingly overloaded congestion fixtures.
I think that's such a fun idea that you just threw out there, Mina, that like, what if it was like, okay, you got 5 substitutions, but it's like 3 plus 2. So you can make 3 substitutions and you can make 2 substitutions, but they have to be one of your like designated like youth team players. That would really like make it as a much more interesting dynamic, wouldn't it? And it would make managers think about it that little bit more. I think that's a fun idea. Put Mina in charge, everyone.
No, it's funny because there was a newspaper that was talking about Jose Mourinho, and they were saying how pathetic it was that he introduced all these kids in a game. I don't remember the game, but it was in the first half of the season, that's for sure. And they said, oh, look at him, like bringing on the youth to show us that they haven't spent enough money on the squad. And I was like, God, you can't win in Serie A. If you bring on youth, you just like are pathetic. If you don't bring on youth, you don't believe in the future. So it's like,
damned if you do, damned if you don't. Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, Mina, one last question for today's episode. It's from Misak. Oh, I'm really sorry, Misak. I've definitely butchered your name before. I'm so sorry. Misak Likian, who is another Chronicles Tifoso, another Patreon member. Misak writes, I know it's Juve related, but is something that is making almost all of the Juventini lose their heads. Why is Rabiot always the first name on the team sheet? What does he bring that other Juve midfielders don't bring? What's his role in Allegri's system that the other four midfielders can't do as well as him? Mina, I know this is the question you are dying to answer as our biggest Adrien Rabiot stan.
I mean, God knows. I would love to bring Didier Deschamps, Max Allegri, and just put them in a room together and be like, is his mother, is his agent, is she threatening your life? Like, is something going on? Like, explain to me.
You don't
why
have to
this
talk.
Man...
Just nod if you're...
just nod.
If you're at risk. If you don't want to tell us, if you've got someone watching you, if you're worried about the walls are bugged, just nod if there's something we need to know.
Because it's insane that a man who Capello has described as somebody who just doesn't even understand football. And Gazzetta said, we're still unsure. We're like 30 games into the season and they're still not sure what Rabiot does. I mean, look, Arthur got a lot of flag, and rightfully so, for his performance against Villarreal. But it is also because he does have a player like Rabiot alongside him. There was a part of me that felt sorry for him because you don't know what the point of Rabiot is. He doesn't make insertions from midfield like Allegri keeps telling us he can do and just doesn't. Yeah. Physical, he's reckless most of the time. He doesn't watch his markers. He's poor defensively. He always drops his concentration. Okay, if there's one department in PSG that they haven't got right, yeah, one department. I mean, they've got like a stacked midfield, and they've always had a relatively okay defense, Thiago Silva or Marquinhos or whatever. Their midfield has always been the problem, right? Their midfield has always been the problem ever since they lost Thiago Motta. And Verratti's probably their only guy right now who shines, because not even Ronaldo, who's a wonderful midfielder, has managed to shine. Juventus go and get a midfielder from there? If PSG are willing to let you go, you're probably not that good to begin with, because this is the one department they don't know how to do. I honestly do not know what his strengths are. I have only seen weaknesses from him. I know that he can manage a cross, which is great. He sometimes manages a shot from outside. Again, most of those aren't converted. I can't play a player because he might manage one cross. But right now, honestly speaking, I'll put it this way. When I was speaking to actually a managing director, sporting director over the week after the Juventus game, he said even if they put Perrin in that place, Perrin is the substitute goalkeeper for Juventus, they would have done better than Rabiot managed. So nobody knows. Nobody knows what it is. I mean, now he's maybe playing because there's just a serious injury crisis and there are no midfielders available, so they have to play Rabiot. But when there is an option there, like there was in the beginning of the season, he was still the name on the sheet. So I do genuinely think there is something either we're not seeing in training, or something of a more, let's just say, crazier nature than that.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think sometimes we can be too damning of individuals in certain contexts. I think it's been kind of interesting to see a couple of players at Juventus who were not going great at Juventus, who are thriving at Tottenham in very quick time, Bentancur and Kulusevski, although also I think everyone overreacts the newest thing, and a more sensible judgment on both those players will be given at the end of the season than right now. But still, they're off to an encouraging start at Tottenham. And I think that's always worth bearing in mind. But Rabiot is a mystery to me. He wasn't particularly a success at PSG. He wasn't, they didn't mind letting him go. And even if you think there's something there to save, I haven't seen it at Juventus. What does he do? He scores some great goals every now and then, but in terms of what he provides overall to the team, to team balance, to Juventus build up play, I don't get it. And the only thing I can say about that is, Mina, look, sometimes we all have to remind ourselves, and I certainly do, that I haven't won Serie A. I haven't gone to a Champions League final. Max Allegri has. I haven't won international cup competitions. Didier Deschamps has. So I'll defer. But to me, Adrien Rabiot is a mystery.
Can I just say to you that he was picked over Camavinga for the Euros? Yeah, I mean, are you mad? Yeah, it really makes no sense to me. I'm telling you this. Every writer for L'Equipe, every writer for Parisien, every writer right now in Italy is trying to answer this question, And I can honestly tell you, none of us has found the answer. Maybe one day we'll figure it all out. But until then, it just goes to show you that if you are good to your mother, you get everything in life. And Rabiot has been good to his mother. So we hope you enjoyed this Serie A Chronicles Q&A. Check out our website at serieachronicles.com and click the Chronicles Tifosi button to join our Patreon community, where you'll get access to exclusive episodes. Or to support the show with a one-time tip, you'll also find the button on the website to take you there. Get your questions in on Twitter at SerieChronPod with the hashtag @ChroniclesQ&A or via the website. Find us both on Twitter at Nikki Bandini, at Mina Rizuki, and subscribe to the Serie A Chronicles YouTube channel for clips of the show. This was a really fun Q&A, guys. Thank you for your questions, and do please keep them coming. Until then, Forza Italia, and let's hope that we see you all at the World Cup. Ciao for now.
Started moving, it did panic me a little bit, but I think we got through it because I was like, I can't read it anymore.
Yeah, because I was like, stop it, she's trying to read this.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Lucky Land Casino, asking people, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
Lucky? In line at the deli, I guess?
Aha, in my dentist's office. More than once, actually.
Do I have to say?
Yes, you do.
In the car before my kids' PTA meeting.
Really?
Yes.
Excuse me, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
I never win and tell.
Well, there you have it. You can get lucky anywhere, playing at LuckyLandSlots.com. Play for free right now. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.